All right. Hey, Jenny, good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for joining us. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks.
For those listening, Jenny Bernardo is the author of Week 26. Now, for a lot of people in the world, they'd be like, Week 26? What, what exactly are you talking about? That doesn't make any sense. For
Right.
those of us that are parents of premature babies, we know exactly probably what you're referencing. I'm guessing that may have been when your babies were born. Is that
That's
and babies, right? So maybe if you could just for our listeners just share a little bit about your journey and how you came to join the preemie parent community.
yeah. So that's absolutely right. Week 26 references the week in which my twins came into this world. Um, and unfortunately, it was due to me having placenta previa. It was a slight placenta previa at the time, is what I was told.
What is that? What is that? We all learn a lot of terms. I
Sure.
know, my twins' mom had preeclampsia, so I know what that is.
Yeah.
But you're obviously talking about the placenta where the babies are being
Right.
carried, right? What is
So
that?
it's essentially when it blocks starts to block the birth canal. Uh,
Okay.
and so I had a slight, it had just begun, but they told me that it was most likely kind of turn and resolve on its own.
Yeah.
When I had gone in to my doctor due to some light spotting, so that's when they discovered that's what I had. And the night that I had actually gone to see my doctor, about 2 o'clock in the morning, is when I began to hemorrhage. And
Uh,
is what rushed me to the emergency room in the middle of the night. So obviously it erupted. And, they were able to stabilize me at the hospital at that point. Um, but a few hours later, it happened a second time. Um, and they, determined that they were going to keep me there for about 7 to 10 days to just monitor me.
yep.
And then a few hours later, it happens a third time, which kind of took me over the edge. It was, I was losing so much, blood at that time that they said, we're having these babies today. So they sort of rushed me into the operating room. Um,
Wow.
and just, within minutes, my babies, they were out. I obviously had to get a transfusion. you know, they gave me a quick spinal tap.
Yeah.
It was just, it happened so fast. And they were taken out and, you know, put into their incubators and immediately taken up to the NICU. So it was a very traumatic
Sure.
experience, to say the least. Um,
So you go from everything is a little bit of spotting,
that's right.
and then you're thinking, okay, 7 to 10 days, we've got some time to kind of figure out what all this means, what's
Yeah,
going on, try and get a little,
I was already frantic. I'm like, I can't
yeah,
stay in this hospital for 7 to 10 days. What do you mean? I got a daughter at home. She's got school. I've got, I work full time. So even that was just in itself, and then
yeah.
the
Your
unexpected.
your brain trying to figure out how you're gonna
Right, right.
manage. How am I gonna manage the rest of?
Yeah,
No, I can do that with babies inside of me. What are you talking about?
yeah, that's right. And then the unexpected happened, and I ended up, pretty much living there for the next 5 months. Um, so yeah, that's sort of what landed me in the
Mhm.
hospital.
And how was the assessment of your twins? So, like, as I recall, like our twins were born at 25 weeks.
Hmm.
Um, and every day is helpful. They were hoping we get to 28 weeks. They've got sort of their, and you learn that, yes, those mean something, and every baby or babies are on their own journey, and
Yep.
where are they really, and how have they developed, and is it the A baby or the B baby? I mean, there's all these dynamics
Right. Right.
that go into it. Um, I guess one question: what was the? You remember how soon you were able to? I know one of the questions that, or one of the issues, challenges, is the time between delivery and being able to actually bond and hold your babies. Some NICUs are starting to design their spaces so that there's actually never any separation. I'm kind of curious what your experience was from that perspective.
Yeah, I did not hold either of them for probably about it was about 2.5 weeks. And
Uh,
that I think was also a result of me not speaking up, uh,
mm,
because it ultimately just got to the point, I was there during, or I tried to be during most of their care time. So every 3 hours,
yeah,
I tried to be present. And at one point, I'm sitting there and, I'm kind of hovering over, my son's isolette, and the nurse comes in. It was a nurse that I had become very close with. She says, have you held him yet? And I said, no, I haven't. And she goes, oh, we've got to get you to hold him. Like, how come you haven't held him yet? I can't believe that. And I'm like, I didn't know I could hold him, so
so yeah, so for anybody that's hearing this, parents should not have to. I'm
absolutely.
sorry, parents should not have we're not gonna talk about locations. Parents want to, if people read the book, they can figure it out. But that's, I mean, your twins are, I know your twins are 6 now, so we're not talking like this isn't turn of the century here. This is in the last, half dozen years. There's way too much evidence out there of how, what a huge impact difference it makes, skin to skin care.
Mhm.
Frankly, for us parents, for our own mental well-being, but also for the development of our babies. And I am sorry that, that 2.5 weeks.
Yeah, I mean,
Finally, and you were there. It sounds like you were there pretty much every day.
I was there every day. I did not
Oh,
miss one day. I'd missed one day because there was a snowstorm and I couldn't get to the hospital.
yeah,
But aside from that, I was
yeah,
all day.
yeah,
And as a parent, you just feel so, you know, um, like you can't do anything. Like there's nothing that
yeah.
you do, and they're in the hands of these doctors and nurses, and you're kind of at their mercy. And so it didn't even dawn on me that I could even, hold them. Um, so
Mhm.
I didn't think to ask that question because they just look so
Yeah,
vulnerable and
because you're gonna break them. Yeah, if
fragile that
you're,
you're
yeah,
afraid, touch them, that you're going to move a leaf or, take out their oxygen.
right.
Yeah, that was something that I wish
Mhm.
I had spoken up sooner. But and once I was, learned that I was able to do that, I did it as much as I could for both,
Yeah,
for sure.
yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So lesson
What
learned
was,
there
yeah.
for sure.
Do you remember? Did you have a point when you remember using your voice, or when you started to speak up, or when you had a sense that you were getting to know your babies and understanding their cues? Is there any?
I mean, I think the more I started to partake in their care times and sort of understand, like you said, their cues and when they would have, an apnea or bradycardia, and, the machines would go off, and I sort of, okay, you know, not an emergency. They're gonna come out of this. This is fine. Go, tap their foot or whatnot to get them to snap out of it. Um, I became more involved. Um, there were also certain nurses that I felt more comfortable being open to, just because we started to create this relationship. Since I was there every day and we were there for so long. There were other nurses that were pretty quiet. They came in, they did their thing, and then they kind of left. Um,
Yeah.
but there were other nurses who still, I still think about, and some of them I still talk to, and that really left an impact on that journey because they kept me involved and they engaged in conversation, and we, you know, did the care times together. And so I think I started to understand more about what was happening on a daily basis because I started to kind of become a part of their growth and their
Yeah.
journey there. So I think that was pretty important, is to just ask questions and be a part of their care times, and change their diaper or help with the bath time, or whatever it may be. And obviously as they grew older and gained weight, it became easier and easier. But I don't think there's like a specific point in time, but I think
Yeah.
the more I started to get involved and understood that my voice mattered, uh,
Yeah.
that nurses actually were considerate of it, then I started to engage more and be more a part um, of their of their journey there.
Yeah. It's interesting. I mean, I had a similar experience, right? There were certain nurses that wanted to communicate, were had just, their emotional intelligence was higher, they were more aware. And it's tricky because ultimately the baby is the patient.
Hmm.
That is who's that's what's the baby's paying the bills, not
Right.
the parents. Um, but we have the ability to be a contribution and to make a difference as well, and to be frankly a thorn in their side as well if things are not going well.
Sure.
And it's hard to remember, it's hard to have the perspective that if you are also an employee somewhere, to think about your own job and to think about how much of our job we just got to like, oh, there's stuff we got to get done and things we got to do, and no, that's a pain. And the times when you really get to be able, really kind of bring your full self and your best self, and remember that the nurses and the doctors they've got the same headaches and the same
Sure.
challenges that we do.
Yep.
And that for those of us that are there, we were there 119 days with our daughter, and you'd shared you were there for 5 months. Um, that's our whole world
Hmm.
when we're in the NICU, and we're unusual. I mean, I don't know what the average length of stay is. It's probably 5 days or something. It's really short. And
Yep.
that most parents, maybe they're there for, maybe at the longest 2, 3 weeks, 4 weeks if there's, but
Mhm.
we're pretty rare, and we're impactful for those of us that are there for a long time. What So in the journey, so 5 months. So yeah, you're there even a little bit longer than than we were. Were there were there any times where you had tough calls, or things that you had to consider or think about? Were there any moments during your twins' journey that were touch and go, or and then also you shared about having you have a daughter that was 5 years old at the time, and just kind of um, what it what that was like trying to. I mean, a 5-year-old is old enough to start to have some awareness, and
Yep.
probably understood that, had a brother and a sister that for some reason wasn't at home.
Yeah, I mean you touch on two things there. So the first one, as far as some touch and go, obviously I think every day is touch and go there, especially in the beginning.
Yeah.
Uh, as they always say, you take three steps forward and then you take two steps back. Just when you think things are going well, they take a step back. They need to go back on, oxygen or get a blood transfusion or whatever it may be. But I think the two big things that stick out to me um, were, one, my son had stage 3 retinopathy of prematurity. So that was something that he had to get a procedure done on both of his eyes at
Yeah.
the time. So that was tough to go through, to kind of see him back being, vulnerable again and sedated and going through that process. And the thought of, if we don't do this procedure, he could potentially go blind. So, we had to make that decision. And my daughter, she had a lot of problems with her breathing. There were times where I watched her code and, nurses rushing in to bring her back, which was a very surreal experience to sit there and, and watch that happen. So those are a couple times that really stuck in my head, that I'll never forget. But and then as you mentioned, my daughter at home, she was 5 at the time, um, and was just very confused. Had lots of questions, but at the same time, she was very positive. She's That's just her personality. I mean, she's a very sweet and strong little girl, and she just wanted to meet them. She was just, why aren't they home yet? Why can't I go to the hospital? And it had been during flu season, so
Ah,
children were not allowed in the hospital at that time.
oh, okay.
So she didn't see them until it was probably 3 or 4 months into their journey where she was actually able to come to the hospital, and finally meet them. They were, at that point, they were in open cribs. Uh,
Yeah.
they weren't as, they had grown. They weren't as small. So I'm almost kind of blessed that that's when she was able to see them for the first time. She had seen them on like FaceTime and pictures and stuff, but you know, face to face and in reality, it was we were able to take them out of the cribs and finally take a picture of the five of us together. So it was a really,
Yeah.
really unique, amazing moment. But she was at home, and she would, how are they doing today? What did they, what tests did they pass today? She would draw them pictures, that she would ask me to take to hang on their walls at the hospital. So
Yeah.
she was just,
Right.
I think the hard part for us was trying to keep her life normal as possible and just continuously taking her to school and her activities and being there for dinner with the three of us. So we took that time, that was sort of sacred time, and we would be there with her. I would
Mm.
take the morning shift at the hospital. My husband would take the evening shift, so that we, didn't really miss a beat. So we just had this routine going on a daily basis. Wake up, I would go to the hospital or drop my daughter off at school. Then I'd go to the hospital while she was at school. I spent time there, and then I would go pick her up, come home. We'd spend time together, and then my husband would take off and he would take the night shift. So
Yeah.
husband and I were very rarely at the hospital together, just because we didn't want to be away from our daughter at home. We wanted to kind of keep her life just kind of running smoothly, and not make it seem like there were lots and lots of changes going on. So it was a tough balance, for sure. But I think we did a pretty good job of tag teaming, and
Yeah.
work. So,
Yeah. You get to that stage where you've got this routine.
mm-hmm,
The, your babies are sort of past the um, the trepidation of the call the next morning to see, how the night went. They're kind of, they're in that developing, growing. You got your routine.
Yep,
Um, there is some comfort knowing that your babies are under 24-hour watch of doctors and nurses,
that's right.
right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Um, I had a peanut butter and jelly sandwich every day, I think, for 119 days, which I love peanut butter and jelly, so I was okay with it. Um, but then it's like, and I don't think,
I just didn't eat. There was no time.
yeah, yeah, no, it definitely, I, I got thin myself. And our NICU didn't do, if when I look back, like the amount of training that they did was kind of laughable. For for bringing our daughter home, she came home on oxygen and
Mhm.
I think about 8 prescriptions. I think, but regardless of how much training they do for the transition home, like all of a sudden, it's not like gradual. It's just like boom,
I know. It,
they're home. It's all on you,
that's
and
right.
good
That's right.
luck.
I know.
Right?
That is true. There's really no like ease of transition there. It's just all right. Take them home and good luck to you, and just
Yeah.
so they don't get sick, and keep them. And mine actually, one came home before the other, so I had one at home and I still had one at the hospital, so I was trying to balance that as well, which was tough.
How long do you have to balance that?
It was probably, I think it was about 2 to 3 weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it wasn't too bad, but
Yeah.
and my son was just, he stayed at the hospital longer. Just he just wasn't getting the suck, swallow, breathe coordination of the bottle, so he wasn't take getting as much intake as he was supposed to, so that he could be
Yeah.
discharged. But I just got to the point. I'm like, I'm literally coming to the hospital to feed my baby. Like, can we just? I just want to take him home. Like at this point, his sister's home. Like
Yeah.
I'll feed him at home. Like we'll figure this out.
Yeah.
And we did, and they were fine with it. We had just been there so long that it was time.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah,
And so now your twins are 6,
they're
right?
yes, they just turned 6 years old, and they're doing great. They're amazing. They thankfully they came out of the NICU with no complications. My daughter, I did have, um, I had the to track her breathing.
Yeah.
I asked for that, to take that home because I was so nervous that she was going to stop breathing and I wasn't going to know. But otherwise, they came home just fine. They hit all their milestones, and now they're 6, and you would never know that they
Mm,
had a rough start. Um, and they're doing great, thankfully.
yeah. Yeah, that's great to hear.
Yeah.
Um, and as I mentioned when we started, you are the author of which I have right here. I've got a copy. Week 26. I think I looked at the background. Your background. You're a journalist, so it's not completely a stretch that you thought. And I don't know if you did any writing or if you did any journaling while your twins were in the NICU. But curious what when you decided I want to really put time and dedicate into sharing this story with others. When did the moment of inspiration hit
Yeah. So I would always, track their weight. I would track their feeding schedule. I would track the tests that they passed. I would track, how their day went, whether it was good or bad. And I had everything on paper. I also I started a like an online journal for family and friends,
you?
as everybody was checking in, and I just kept repeating myself. So I'm like, you know what, I'm gonna create a centralized location where everyone can log in and they can check the updates that I provide. And so, I had everything on a daily basis, just sort of here's the updates. This is how they did today. They are, 3 pounds today, and they were able
Mm.
to take in, 2 ounces of milk or whatever it may be.
Yeah, yeah,
And so after they came home, it was something that I started to go back and read.
yeah.
I would just, kind of not relive it, but just kind of, oh my, I can't believe we went through this type deal. And then eventually my husband said, why don't you write a book about it? And I said, I've never published a book. I don't even know what the process is there. You've got this story that is a testament to they're these little miracles, and they're an inspiration to other families. And we agreed, I think this is a story that should be told. They can give others hope, and they can maybe help another NICU parent get through their journey with their children in the NICU.
Yeah.
And, it was, uh, the more I thought about it, it's like, I wanted something like this when I was in the hospital. I wanted somebody to tell me it's going to be okay. Like, they're going to get through this and they're going to come home. And I didn't have that aside from, Googling something, or, there just wasn't something tangible that I could pick up, there, that I found at least, that would give me that sort of hope. So I put an outline together, and I just started writing their story, our story, to not only about their journey in the NICU, but also, from a mom's perspective of what I went through. And then also from my husband's perspective, because he had a lot going on as well in the background. He had gone back to school to finish his degree at the time. He had, started his own business. He was going through personal issues with his family,
Yeah.
while dealing with having babies in the NICU. And so I think it's important to show all of those perspectives, uh,
Yeah.
as you kind of have to balance everything that's going on in each of your lives. I also talk about my daughter's perspective. What was she thinking?
Yeah.
Questions did she ask? Because I think it's important that we all went through this together. And how did we get through it? So I did it that way, and I think a lot of people are fascinated by how it's written that way, because you know
Mhm.
the dads just kind of get shafted a lot. They don't talk about a lot.
Yeah, a
Really,
little.
it's really just the mom, you know.
Yeah.
And so I really wanted to make a point that I think it's important to kind of show all of those stories. So I just started writing. It took me, close to 4 years to actually get it, to where it is today and published. It
Yeah.
was something I did when I had time, which was not a lot.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
Raising 3 kids and working full time. But since I published it in September, I've just really been trying to connect with those in the NICU community and really get out there to help, people like you raise awareness and get this book into the hands that really need it the most, because I think it is a really valuable resource. Uh,
Mhm.
for other NICU parents. I think, if you know somebody who has a baby in the NICU, how do you react? What questions do you ask? What are they going through? This will tell you kind of what they're going through. So that was my inspiration for writing it. I wanted to leave this legacy for my 3 kids.
Yeah.
So they can read this one day and understand their story, and how they are such an inspiration to others. Um, so yeah, there's a couple reasons why I did it, but I'm
Yeah.
super proud of it, and I think I hope
Really
that it
beautiful.
that it will help others. I know that it has. I've gotten a couple messages already from some moms that it's been, a healing journey for them, just kind of reading through it. But yeah, that's kind of how this came about, and kind of where we are today.
That's great. A couple things that you shared that resonated with me, and I imagine resonate with a lot of other parents. That when you're in that journey, it's natural. You create that. You talk about that routine that you have,
Hmm.
and that life can occur like really day to day, like really moment to moment, and that you can almost forget about that the rest of the world is still happening.
That's right.
Like
No,
you are not that worried about
no.
all this other stuff, right? And then it's sort of a it can be kind of a shock when all of a sudden, the world is relating to you and your babies is like everything. Well, everything's normal now, um, and you're sort of like thrown back into day to day life, and it can be there's a reason why parents have PTSD and have a real shock from that experience.
Yeah.
And the other thing that you mentioned too is, and I know I had a similar experience of um, isolated, alone, nobody understands, there's nothing out there. Um, and I realized that this was we were in the NICU 2006, so almost another generation ago it seems like, but
Mm.
there probably was support out there. There probably were resources, but
You don't know how to get to it.
yeah, you don't know, you're just not that aware. And so, our at Graham's Foundation, our vision is every parent, that no parent goes through the journey alone,
Hmm.
but we don't have a definition of what that guide or help or support looks like. It could be your book. It could be um, what they find on Google or a Facebook group or what a social media or you know I know what had the biggest impact for me was having another parent to talk to when
Yes.
you had to make the decision to stop support with Graham, being able to talk to another parent that had to make a similar decision,
Yeah.
and just kind of helped us kind of reconfirm that we were making the best choice for him.
Yeah.
And so, that was like hugely impactful. And so, like that's why at Graham's Foundation, we love our mentor program, but we also know that that's, one, does the parent, is the parent at their NICU, do they raise awareness of what support is available? Do they have support available? If so, to what degree? And then for those parents, is that what they need, or is that what they're looking for? Is that what they're, aware of? So I also recognize that some parents find us even after they've gone home, but still at any point in time, being able to connect with other parents, because you might still, there's parents that might still have questions as our babies become children and enter the learning years. They
Yeah.
can bump up against different different things and wonder, and so being able to connect with other parents that have shared a journey like you and I have shared. Like one, we get it, we get related really quickly, and then we've had some shared experiences, and we've learned some things along the way, and um, yeah, so I am
Yeah.
yeah thrilled to be able to have the chance to talk to you, to be able to share with our community your journey and the hope and inspiration that you've left for other parents. We really appreciate it. I guess just is there anything else that you'd like to share that we haven't had a chance to talk about so far?
No, I mean, I think you guys are doing an amazing job. I think you guys are. I wish I had known that there was something like the Grams Foundation when I was in the hospital. I completely agree that, you know, there probably were resources out there. I just didn't know how to find them. That was, you know, the NICU becomes something that's new. I had no idea that it even was a thing, you know, or a place in the hospital, until I went through it. And now it's a part of my life, and it will be for the rest of my life. Um, and so I think it's important to continue to, you know, make aware that there are these types of resources available, whether it is my book or whether it is, you know, the Grams Foundation or some other foundation out there that might be able to help somebody that's in the NICU that, you know, is not in the hospital but has gone through a similar situation. I did have a parent, a friend of mine who her twins were now, I think, like 16 at the time, and I hadn't talked to her in years.
Mm.
But because I was going through that situation, I instantly reached out to her and said, "I need to talk to you. Tell me about your experience, and,
Yeah,
you know, is this normal? You know, is this, you know?" And you hear it from the doctors and nurses, but you want to hear it from somebody who's been through,
right.
and really understands what you're going through. So, you know, I hope to resonate with other parents out there, and know that they're not alone, and
Yep,
there are resources out there that can help you get through it then and also post NICU. So
right. Well, again, for those of you that are watching on the screen, week 26, beautiful cover, Jenny Bernardo. Thanks again for your thanks for being talking to us today.
thank you so much.